So, we've seen that Danto says in the history of art, we've gone from this imitation theory from Plato, in which people thought, oh, yeah, art is just all about creating imitations of things, to this new reality theory, where the idea here is that art is not merely about imitating reality, it is about creating new realities. And we've seen this idea pop up all throughout class as well. It starts off right there in Aristotle, Plato's student, who says, no, look, like art isn't so bad because it's creating deficient imitations of reality. It's actually creating new ways for us to look at reality. And then fast forward to Immanuel Kant and Clive Bell, the formalists. Their idea was, look, what makes art beautiful is that it has these significant forms that it creates. It's not merely imitating an image of something. No, it's creating new forms. And then go even further into the 20th century with Greenberg and Steinberg, who point out, if you look at, like, say, that Jasper Johns target with four faces, what Johns is doing there is not creating a particular form or creating or imitating the image of anything. No, he's creating a new object in and of itself. So the idea with reality theory is that you've got a lot of art which is not merely imitating stuff, but it is just creating new stuff in itself that exists on its own. So you first see this, according to Danto, in these post-impressionist paintings. And Danto points out, look, once you have this reality theory of art to make sense of how these paintings can count as art, even though they're not very good imitations, well, then art museums start putting stuff in them like weapons and sarcophagi and knight helmets and bodices. These things that aren't actually imitating anything, but seem to be, somehow beautiful or artistic creations from different cultures at different times and different periods. And so he points out, look, at this point, art all of a sudden seems to have this definition that's making use of the reality theory that it's not necessary for art to be imitating something in order to count as art. No, it merely needs to make a new thing in and of itself, a new reality. And he points out, look, this continues through into the 50s and 60s with Liechtenstein, who creates these big giant paintings that you might think are like, well, look, it's an imitation of a comic book. You might think, oh yeah, this fits in with the imitation theory of art. But what Danto points out is, well, no, it's not really an imitation, because part of the point here of these Liechtenstein paintings is their huge size, right? They're not merely imitations of comic books. What he's created is a new thing, which is a big giant enlargement of comic books. You would never actually mistake this for a page in a comic book. The point is that it's so huge. He's kind of here's a close up of one of them. You can see how he paints these by using dots of colors, just like a dot printer makes up comic books. There's an actual page from a comic book zoomed in. But this picture of Batman from an actual comic book, well, that would be what, at most like a foot tall in an actual comic book, whereas this one from Liechtenstein is like 4 or 5 feet tall. You're not going to mistake it for an actual comic book. And so he says, look, to make sense of these things, you've got to have this idea of the reality theory of art. And he points out, look, there's just all these new different art movements that start cropping up in the 20th century in which you need to understand art in terms of the reality theory. So this Barnett Newman painting, for example, doesn't seem to be imitating anything in particular. No, Barnett Newman has created a new object in and of itself, which counts as an artwork. Or a Pete Mondrian, like this. Or some of the Jasper Johns pieces that we looked at earlier in the term. So all of this stuff, well, you're not going to be able to say this is art if in order to be art, it needs to fall under the imitation theory. Here's a Robert Rauschenberg piece, Bad, I think we looked at